through your blood volume, we've got to get rid of that stuff.
But not in the glomerulus, though, right?
Yeah, not in the glomerulus, because that's only filtering out. Exactly.
Okay.
I did want to show you the flow pattern here. Let's say that let's pick on somebody. Let's pick on potassium. Let's say you're potassium, you're traveling through the afferent arteriole, you're traveling through the glomerulus, you don't get filtered out, you escape this time. You're now traveling up through that efferent arteriole. It loops around here and connects with this peritubular capillary. Somewhere along the road in the peritubular capillary, your body is going to secrete that potassium from the bloodstream into part of this tubule network here. If you're secreting it, your body intends for you to get rid of it as what? Urine. So if you're doing secretion, your body doesn't want it in the bloodstream anymore. Your body wants it to be removed as part of your urine. So you can see that at the point of the peritubular capillary, we will now move this item, say it's potassium, into the tubule system, and now we're going to travel ultimately through this collecting duct. And not to mess this picture any crazier than it already looks, you might recall those renal pyramids. These collecting ducts sit by the thousands, all pointing their collecting ducts toward the tip of that renal pyramid, and then we have drips of urine that come away from that renal pyramid tip. So ultimately, if you're something like potassium, you'll travel on your way through the peritubular capillary. At some point, you're moved into the renal tubule, through the collecting duct, and then you drip off into those minor calyces. Where do we go next?
Major calyx.
Major calyces, and then where? Renal pelvis, which joins with the ureter, and then now we're to the urinary bladder, and then out of the body to the urethra. So bye-bye to potassium. It's gotten out of the bloodstream at the peritubular capillaries for removal from our body. So let's hit the major items here for secretion. Back in chapter 16, we talked about if you reclaim sodium, you're going to reclaim water, but you in turn will dump out of your urine potassium. Do you remember having that conversation back in 16? Okay, it's back to visit us again. You'll notice here that under the little chart, potassium, it says aldosterone stimulates potassium secretion. What that means is, if aldosterone is present, aldosterone comes to the DCT and inserts channels to reabsorb what? Sodium. You reclaim sodium, you automatically reclaim some water. But in exchange for reclaiming sodium, you're going to dump from the peritubular capillaries what? Potassium. So it's kind of like a hostage exchange here. I'll take your sodium, you give me your potassium, and we'll call it a day. So it's an exchange here for the sodium that's being reabsorbed back in. Alright, so here's a couple of problems. Under the notes box, you'll notice that hyperkalemia can develop through insulin use. It's a side effect of the diabetes medication, so, you know, it's just one of those things that happens. So low potassium levels may develop through insulin use. What that means is you're likely reclaiming sodium, you're likely dumping away your potassium. Hyperkalemia means what is happening?
Too much.
Too much potassium. Too much potassium does what to the resting potential of muscle cells?
Gets you very close to the resting potential. So, well, the further away, so you fire.
Further away, yeah. So if you're negative 70 millivolts at rest, if you have more potassium, you make your inside
less negative.
Less negative, yeah. So maybe you're negative 50, maybe you're negative 30. So you're closer to threshold. So you'll notice here some problems that result from hyperkalemia would be cardiac arrhythmias and heart feeble beating. You know, it's not a real strong contraction, but rather a feeble contraction. So, you know, having either too much or too little potassium is ultimately a problem, and that's coming from reclaiming sodium for blood pressure and releasing the potassium in exchange. That's okay.
I thought hypokalemia would make your heart beat faster.
Hypokalemia is low potassium levels, lower resting potential. That sounds right.
And then hyperkalemia can actually make your heart stop.
Because you're talking excess potassium. I'm having to think out loud.
Okay, I got everything sort of right, and then except for when you're talking about lowering the, because if the threshold is, if it's less negative, it's easier to reach the threshold.
Right.
Your heart beats faster instead of
It may, but the contractions may not also be as effective as if it was a normal threshold and then expired. Maybe the threshold is close, but it's not a full-blown hard contraction like it needs to be.
Okay, so which one makes it? Which one hyperpolarizes?
Hyperpolarizes is more negative, like negative 90, and it's the loss of potassium from the cell that makes it hyperpolarized.
So that would be
hypokalemia.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad I got that figured out. That's reaching back to the in there. Let's talk about hydrogen ions, because that's, of course, related to blood pH regulation. Just for a real quick moment, let's have a flashback to our acid-base discussion when we talked about respiratory systems. You might recall that carbon dioxide can join with the water in your bloodstream. That forms a middleman known as carbonic acid. And what does carbonic acid break down and form? Good. Hydrogen, there you go, and bicarbonate. Okay, so you can see that ultimately we have these two ions in our bloodstream. Which one of these two ions really influences the pH? The hydrogen. The bicarbonate acts as a buffering system, which we're going to get to a little later, but this can actually help to either lower or raise blood pH based on where you're currently sitting. So if you're breathing slowly right now, you're hypoventilating, do you have more hydrogens or less hydrogens in your bloodstream? More. Really slow breathing means you're not exhaling out the CO2. That means you're keeping the carbon dioxide and it's making hydrogens for your bloodstream. Where's your pH going if you're hypoventilating? Acidosis, yeah, going down. Take a look on your worksheet.
Well, that makes you breathe faster, though.
Makes you breathe faster, because there's a difference between the cause and the effect. The cause is slower breathing, and the effect is a faster breathing rate to get rid of it. Exactly. So notice if you're in acidosis, what will happen? More hydrogen ions from the bloodstream may not be exhaled off, but here's one way to get rid of them. Move them from the bloodstream, here to peritubular capillary, into the tubule network, and then excrete them as part of your urine. So a person who has emphysema or COPD and is currently hyperventilating because their alveoli may not allow them to, do that gas exchange efficiently. It is hard to tell somebody with COPD, just breathe faster, you'll get rid of that CO2. It may not be possible, right? So how their kidneys compensate for it is by taking that excess hydrogen, dumping it into the filtrate, and it leaves your body as urine. So this is setting us up to understand how we do acid-base balance, because if you have excess hydrogens in your bloodstream and you're currently in an acidic situation, then you're going to dump those excess hydrogens out and lose them that way. So if you've knocked your head, you've passed out, you're not currently breathing, your kidneys may still be able to remove a little bit of that hydrogen ion from the bloodstream. So it's a compensation mechanism. Notice if you're in alkalosis here, we secrete less hydrogen ions into the filtrate. If you're in alkalosis, let's say your blood pH is 7.8, we may want to keep additional hydrogen ions, because what are we trying to do to your pH?
Get it back to 735, 745.
Good. Get you back down around 735 to 745. So keep those hydrogens. Don't dump them into your urine. Instead, take those bicarbonate ions that are currently traveling through your filtrate. Where are they being reabsorbed? PCT. They were coupled with sodium. Yes. If you can't sodium, you're probably always right? Water. Yep. So bicarbonate was reabsorbed back up here in the PCT. So you say, okay, inhibit the bicarbonate reabsorption and let the bicarbonate leave your body in the urine as well. So this is a way to fix an alkalosis problem. Secrete less hydrogen from the peritubular capillary into the filtrate and reabsorb less bicarbonate here in your PCT. Hey, what we're trying to do is take a high pH and bring it down. So by bringing it down, you're going to do less of everything. Less reabsorption, less secretion. There's a link there. If you want to lower your blood pH, you want to reabsorb less and secrete less. If you want to increase pH, you want to reabsorb more and secrete more. Make sense? So if you want to lower pH, you reabsorb less, you secrete less. And if you want to increase pH,